Hey guys, my name is Ori Koskas, and for those of you who doesn't know me yet, I'm a financial consultant and a real estate consulting in Israel. And this video is for the Olim Hadashim community. So if you're watching this video and you're speaking Hebrew and you already know everything is happening in Israel, you can move forward and don't watch this video. But this video is meant for, like I said again, for the Olim Hadashim, people that come to live in Israel. And you can see I made other videos about pension, about kanot ishtalmut, about insurances, about mortgages, about all those issues that nobody really wants to learn and nobody really teach us in Israel. It's everything involving financial education. So I got a special request to do a video about the tax system in Israel and bituach Leumi and how everything is working here. Obviously, it's involving each and every one of you guys that living in Israel decided to do Aliyah Hadasha. Most likely that even if you live here for 10 years, you don't really know everything I'm about to tell you, because I said that people that grew up here doesn't even know it. So it's important for you guys to know these things because, first of all, knowledge is the most important thing in financial education, actually to grow financially and to not lose money. And also, it's a great way to make money because when you learn how to save money, you basically learn how to increase your net, the more of your financial situation. So let's start with understanding that in Israel, basically, there's three different tax group that even if you are an employee or you're a self-employee, it doesn't really matter if you have your own business, if you have a company, you always have to work with those three government bodies that in the end of the day, it's a different kind of tax. One obviously is the regular tax, income tax. We'll talk about it later. One is Ma'am. It's like the VAT that we always adding into everything we're buying or doing in this country. And the third one is Bituach Leumi. Basically, kind of a social security that we have to pay every month. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on social security. When Israel established, first of all, obviously, they looked in the entire modern world. They wanted to become, again, socialism. They wanted to be socialist. They wanted to create a situation when you can, people will give money to help the elderly, to help people that can't really walk. And the idea was to, again, to each person will give some money to pay for the people who can generate money for themselves. But not many people know that the idea in Israel specific for bituach Leumi, for social security, was actually the army. Because what happened is when we started the independent war, after it ended, we understood that you can't really keep a force, a normal force of soldier that would be amount soldier would be enough to fight wars. And they understand you have to keep it like even in older ages, like even in 22, it's like they're reserved. And what Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, said, like, wait, how can I do it with reserve people that I also need to feed their families and probably they have children by this point of their life? So we have to give them a higher salary. We have to give them higher income. And he said, great, so let's take it out of social security. Let's call it for Bituach Leumi. Everybody will pay money from his salary, and that money will go also to the IDF for the reserve for able to pay for their salaries. So that's basically the history of why Bituach Leumi started. Now, most people, again, just know that Bituach Leumi comes down from their salary. Most employee people, they don't really understand exactly from which amount it's supposed to come down, what's the level of payment, because it's changing from different amount of salaries. And what is it will pay me for? Like, what's the point of me paying Bituach Leumi? So yes, it's always bad to pay tax. It's always not fun to pay tax in any kind of form. But Bituach Leumi is something that's theoretically, again, most people like myself never actually got anything from Bituach Leumi, but it's supposed to be a safety net for all kind of different situations, even for people that just having babies. Women that have babies, for example, is one of the best example, are getting for the first 3 months that are not working, they're getting the money from Bituach Leumi, 3 months salary. That's nice. When you're getting older, above the age again, 62, 67, you start getting another level of income that it's not your pension. That's called Bituach Leumi. Again, how much money? It's depend again how much money you put inside. If you become handicapped, We're getting money from Bituach Leumi every month for every child we have. Again, we'll talk about it later with the exact number. And of course, the reserve. Most Olim Hadashim is not really relevant for you guys, but if you've been in the reserve, of course, you will get that money. Also, you need to remember one of the most important thing when I'm talking about employees, people, that when they take Bituach Leumi, they take those amount of money from your salary. Usually, they take it from the brutto amount, meaning the total income before taxation, and that's not very fun. But again, that's what you're gonna get to pay for. So, how exactly is it work? Again, everybody is basically paying it. What's the amount of money we actually paying? So again, if you're employee, what they're going to take is on a salary that up to 7,000 shekel, 122, the employee, okay, the guy that works, will pay 3.5% from that amount, and the employer will pay 3.55, okay, percent, of course, from that amount of money. So total from a 7,122 amount of money of like 7.5%, 7.05% will come from the salary. If you're making more than 7,122, they taking from the employee another 12% on the part of the more than that. For example, if you're making 8,000 shekel, 7,122, they're going to take from you 3.5%. If you're making more than 7,000 on the gap or that 878,000 shekel, you're going to make 800, how much money is it? Yeah, 878,000 shekel, not thousand, I'm sorry. 878 shekel, they're going to take 12% from that amount of money. So again, the more you're making money, the more you put more in Bituach Leumi. And that's how it works. For self-employee, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same. If you have your own business, if you're a sek musha, for example, you're paying up to the amount of money of 7,122 monthly average income, you will pay 5.79% from that income. And again, whatever above that income, you will pay 12.83%. And that's basically Bituach Leumi, that you pay it again every month. You have to do it no matter if you're working, if you're not working. That's, by the way, one of the biggest problem in Israel that people don't know it. For people who leave the army, for example, they're not aware of Bituach Leumi. They're not paying Bituach Leumi because they say, I'm not working, so why should I pay Bituach Leumi? It's supposed to come out of my salary. But that's not true. Every individual in this country paying Bituach Leumi, and that's something that they need to understand. And a lot of people are getting fines. Why? Because they living here, they're not really working. Nobody tells them they need to pay Bituach Leumi. They're flying for a vacation for 6 months, like for example, after the soldiers that live, they always look for their big trip. And when they come back, they found out they have a very big debt, and obviously it's the government, so they can just take it from your bank account. So you don't really want to be in this situation, and that's why it's extremely important to be aware of this kind of tax that's called Bituach Leumi. But you need to understand, Bituach Leumi, again, also have some kind of good things about it. Again, if God forbid you become handicapped, even if your salary is not really high, and again, if you have a big family and you have to prove that you need more money, you can ask for Bituach Leumi for more money to basically give you another, I don't want to call it incentive because it's not incentive, just to give you like another, it's a pretty in Israel it's called ma'anak, but it's basically like a kind of a donation. It's like a one-time fees or maybe monthly money that you're gonna get every month to make sure you'll have enough money to end the month in an honorable way. Now that's the good part of it. But if to be honest, Bituach Leumi also can be a very very hard body to work with. For example, my personal experience with my dad. My dad got a heart attack after all the years that he worked. He wanted to get the Bituach Leumi incomes, like the extra money, and they never approved him. And it wasn't because they didn't approve him. They told him, no, you're not allowed to get it, or you're not qualified to get it. He actually was qualified to get it. The problem is it's the government, and it's been managed by people that don't really want to work. And so to be honest, it's just very hard to work with them. And they basically just dragged him for a few years in committees and lawyers. So he just gave up. So Bituach Leumi, from one side, is a very good thing for a country to have, and a very good thing for a system, a social system to have to help the ones that can get themselves like work or get money. But from the other side, it's very hard to work with it, and you need to understand it. Also, again, the most important thing to understand is that what you need to pay And when are you entitled for money? For example, again, when you have a baby, when you become a soldier, when you don't work, when you have to have a injured, you have to understand exactly the entitlements of exactly how much money you deserve. Obviously, the money is changing from the income you have, from what the situation, of course, if it's reserved, if you have a baby, if you got injured. And those things usually, when the time comes and you actually do need that money, it's always important to consult with or a financial consultant or with the lawyer that live this industry. Don't give up on those rights that you have to get from Bituach Leumi, because many of the times it's worth a lot of money. And yes, my father, for example, from talking about again a personal experience, he gave up on that money, but in the end of the day, it was a lot of money that he gave up on. So again, maybe they try sometimes to tire you with all the committees and everything, but it's really worth to fight and to get that money. Now, again, what's the maximum you can deposit to Bituach Leumi? Because again, people that makes 100,000 shekel or 200,000 shekel a month, obviously there's a limitation. So basically, it's up to a limit of 50,000 and 50,000 shekels, 695 salary. Meaning that if you're making, for example, 60,000 shekels salary, the up to 50,695, yes, you will pay the Bituach Leumi, as I said before, the 12% above 7,000 whatever, and that 5% on the 7,000. But the gap between 50,000 to 60,000, those 10,000 shekel, you don't have to pay Bituach Leumi. You will have to pay income tax on them, but no Bituach Leumi. So that's basically the thing you need to know about Bituach Leumi. It's again, it's not rocket science. It's very simple. You just have to know those things. So let's talk about the second thing. The second thing is obviously income tax. Income tax can become in many, many different forms. You need to understand that income tax in Israel is divided by different groups. For example, if you're making a tax from stock market, you're making tax from real estate, you're making tax from your work, it's different kind of tax. And sometimes it's even different kind of department in the tax body of the Israel that you don't even talk to the same people. For example, when you sell a house and you're making the profit of the selling of the house, that's called mas shevach, okay? And it's not exactly the same people that you pay the tax from your salary. It's not the same department. Those people don't even know about the other people. So let's talk about the beginning of everything. Let's talk about, again, the confusion of how much money, the most basic thing, how much money you paying from your salary. So Israel, and I can even show it to you in a chart, Israel has a progressive tax system like the US, for example, that we're not paying on a fixed price the taxation. You can see in the chart right now, up to a salary of 7,000 shekel, 10 shekel, you pay only 10% on that amount. From 7,000 to 10,000 shekel, you pay 14%, as you can see here. For more than 10,000 shekel, up to 16,000 shekel, 150, you pay 20%. And it's only on those gaps. Like, for example, if you're making 6,100 shekel a month, you're not paying 20%. No, you pay only 20% on the level between 10 to 16. And then you pay 14 on that level of the 7 to 10. And then, so therefore. Again, above 16 to 22, you pay 31%. Then after 22 is 35%. And then above 46 to 60,000 shekel, you pay 47%. And above 60,000 shekel a month, you're paying 50% tax. Meaning, again, it doesn't mean that if you're making 60,000 shekel a month, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you will pay 30,000 shekel. Again, it's all progressive, and obviously it's possible to calculate. It's not that complicated to calculate it. But for example, again, if you pay 20,000 shekel a month, so up to the 7,000 shekel, they will take 10%. It's 700. From the 7,000 to 10,000 shekel, they will take 14%. So 14% from 3,000 shekel. It's a progressive way to calculate it. It's not very hard. Obviously, you can always do it. You just saw the number. You can always calculate it with ChatGPT. And again, by the way, everything involving our rights in Israel about taxation, about everything you're confusing, you can always ask ChatGPT. Most likely, it will give you the right answer, but it's always good to consult with somebody else. But it's important to understand. There's no maximum of tax to pay. Even if you're making 1,000,000 shekel a month, you will pay 50%, again, from 1,000,000, again, the progressive way. There are ways to get all kinds of points that make your tax your tax breaks a little bit lower. For example, if you are a parent and especially for the women, okay, and you have children, every child you have under the age of 18 give you points, and those points basically increase the amount of money that you are basically free of taxation and don't pay tax on. So that's important to understand. Also, students, for example, or people that just finish a degree in university, they're also getting all kind of benefits. Or for example, if you're living in a place like in the kibbutzim of Gaza or in the Golan Heights, places they consider being high risk, also there's all kind of benefits that you're not paying tax, again, on a certain amount of money, and it's important to understand that. If you are self-employee, your calculation of how much tax is exactly the same, but it's calculated yearly. What does it mean? It's meaning that, let's just say you're making 20,000 shekel or 30,000 shekel a month income of your business. What they're saying with the IRS, we first decided what to put as a down payment from every month you're making. For example, you're making 20,000 shekel a month. The IRS and you close with your accountants. I will pay 5% of that, whatever I'm making every month. But at the end of the year, they have to calculate how much money you made total, what was the expenses, then the profit, and then it's the same thing. If they see you made like 300,000 shekel profit a year, meaning you made like 25,000 shekel a month. So again, they calculate the taxation, the progressive tax, exactly as I explained it here, and it's important to understand. So that's income tax, very simple. Let's talk about a little bit all the other important tax that you have to know in Israel. First of all, again, I was talking about it in the beginning, bituch Leumi, tax, income tax, and VAT. Israel VAT, the money that we're adding to every simple thing we're buying in Israel, from bread, from water, from electricity, from real estate, we're adding it. Okay, it's 18%. That money doesn't go to the person you're paying, it's going to the IRS. The IRS taking that money, again, in a different form. It's not the income tax, it's totally different taxation. So 18%, and again, if you're self-employee, you can get back from the government for whatever you're paying, and whatever you paying ma'am, the VAT. Again, it goes back and forth with your income and tax, like almost every country in the world. So let's talk about, the popular other taxation you have to know that fall under the category of the IRS of income tax, but not really taxed. So for example, it's capital gain profit. Also exists in many countries in the world. For example, when you make profit from stocks, from government bonds, from crypto, all those financial investment, when you sell them, usually you make profit. In 99.9% of the time, you're going to pay 25% on that capital gain profit, but it's not, it's really profit, meaning that if they look at what happened with inflation, and if the value of the money went up, the value of what's the money worth. So again, there can be some kind of a deduct from it. But in the end of the day, if you put 100,000 shekel and I sold it tomorrow on 200,000 shekel in the capital gain and in the stock market, and I have 100,000 shekel profit, I'm going to pay 25%, 25,000 shekel from the profit. It's important to understand. Obviously, you can deduct also losses. If I invested in 7 years, if I lost, for example, 50,000 shekel from selling stocks, losing in the stock market, and then I made 50,000 shekel, then I don't have to make any profit. In some situations, you can also drag your losses for the years to come. Same about crypto if you obviously report it to the IRS. Now, that's number one. The second popular tax that you need to understand, it's about real estate. When you're renting an apartment in Israel, okay, that you're making money out of it from the renters, you in Israel up to 5,471 shekel a month, according to 2025, of course, you don't pay any tax. Whatever you're getting, you can report it to the IRS, but you're not going to pay tax on it. Whatever you make above it, you will have to pay 10%. So let's just say you have two apartments, both of them together is 4,000 shekel here, 4,000 shekel there, 8,000 shekel together. So I have amount of money now of 3,000, almost 600 shekel, that I will have to pay 10%. Even if I have 10 apartments that are making 100,000 shekel a month, again, 5,400 on the side, everything else, 10% on the profit from real estate. Okay, there's also another way to just put it together in my income tax. If it's like a business, if I'm buying, selling, if I'm spending a lot of money on maintenance their houses, maybe it's worth it to make it into a business. Most likely it's not. Most likely the 10% is amazing and it's for the small investors is the best to do. Also, there's company tax that you need to understand. So I talked before about the self-employee business, the IRS take the income tax exactly as an employee guy. Okay, if I have my own business, like Okasek Moshe. But if I open a company, an LTD company in Israel, the tax for that is 23%. 23% for my company. That, again, but it doesn't matter how much money you make. Because example, we said before, for my income tax, if I got to 100,000 shekel amount of money in my income tax, it's insane because I will get to 50% on a lot of the money. And again, it's very high. When you open a company, it's sometimes when you make a lot of money, it's worth it to delay the taxation. So if I open an LTD company, even if I made 1 million shekel, again, profit a year, my tax will be only 23%. And then I can invest the money through the company if it's my company. But if I pull the money to my private income, so there's three ways to do it. The first way is to get it into a salary. And then again, we're going back to income tax. The second way is basically to do it as a self-employee. If I have my Osek Mourshe, for example. So I'm giving a receipt to my company, getting the money. And again, it's the same taxation. The third way is dividend. And in Israel, on taxation, on dividend that I'm pulling from the company is 30%. So what does it mean? That means that if I made 1 million shekel profit on the company, okay? And I pay 23% and the money went down to 700 something. And then I take 30% again for dividend. Basically, it's almost 50% again to get the money into my pocket. As I said before, the IRS, another very pleasant company, that don't worry, they know how to get their money in the end. And the last thing I think you should know, it's what happens when you're selling a real estate in the country or everything involving real estate. It's a very popular taxation you have to know. First of all, if you're buying real estate in Israel up to the amount of money of like 1.8 million shekel, if I'm not mistaken, there's no taxation at all if the first apartment. Above it, again, it's a progressive tax that the more you're buying, you pay more taxation up to like 8%. If it's your second house, investment houses, you pay 8% for the whatever you bought from the first amount of money. For example, if I bought something for 1 million shekel, take into consideration there will be 80,000 shekel just purchase tax for the house. That's about it. Now, there's also a mas shevach. It's the tax we're paying when we're selling a house. So let's just say I bought something for 1 million shekel. It's an investment house. And I sold it for 2 million shekel. So that profit, I'm going to pay 25% on that money. So it's like capital gain tax, again, on the profit. And if it's my first house, no, I'm not supposed to pay taxation. There's level of income that, yes, then you will pay a little bit more tax. But in the end of the day, if it's my first apartment and I sold it to buy a new apartment, no, there won't be any taxation. What's important to understand about real estate, it's always important when you're buying real estate in Israel to keep all the receipts. If you did any kind of construction in the house, if you paid for a middleman, if you paid for a lawyer, everything for a mortgage consultant, everything is all the expenses will be deducted from what the money that will say the profit you had when you sold the apartment. So it's very important when you're buying a house to keep all the receipts so you can obviously deduct them in the future. So that's basically the majority of things you need to understand about Bituach Leumi, IRS in Israel, and the VAT, MAM. So first of all, I'm making more and more content in English. I know you guys I keep getting requests for those. So first of all, I would love it if you share this video to people who think it's relevant. I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. And of course, if there's more subject you want me to talk about and explain, feel free to write it down in the comments and tell me, okay, Ori, I want you to talk about this and this and this. And obviously, I'll do my best to do it. Thank you very much. And again, I'm now filming it. It's the 2025 Passover. So happy holidays to everybody that's watching. And thank you so much.